The wind howled like a living thing that February night in rural Kentucky. Temperature: 8 degrees below zero. Ice coating everything like nature's cruelest joke. Inside Sal's auto repair, 47-year-old Sal Martinez was counting his last $23 in crumpled bills when he heard the desperate pounding on his garage door. 8 motorcycles sat frozen in his lot. 8 leather-clad figures huddled against the storm, shivering so violently they could barely stand. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Every instinct said, keep that door closed. These were hell's angels. This was trouble waiting to happen. But Sal saw something else. He saw hypothermia. He saw frostbite. He saw 8 human beings about to die in the cold. What Sal didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that one of those freezing bikers was someone the Brotherhood would move heaven and earth for. And in exactly 48 hours, the thunder of 999 motorcycles would shake his small Kentucky town like an earthquake. This is the story of one man's choice to see past the patches and leather, and how that choice awakened an army. Sal Martinez wasn't built for heroism. 5'6", stocky build, calloused hands permanently stained with motor oil that no amount of scrubbing could remove. A man who spoke in grunts and communicated best with carburetors and transmissions. His garage sat on the outskirts of Millfield, Kentucky, population 847, a dying town where the coal mines had closed 15 years ago and dreams went to rust like the abandoned cars behind his shop. The kind of place where young people left and never came back, where hope leaked away like oil from a cracked engine block. Sal had owned Martinez Auto Repair for 23 years, inherited it from his father, who'd inherited it from his father before him. 3 generations of Martinez men keeping broken down vehicles limping along Highway 27, serving farmers, truckers, and anyone else stubborn enough to stay in a town the world had forgotten. But times were harder than they'd ever been. The interstate bypass had killed most of his business. Folks drove to Lexington now for their car, repairs fancy shops, with computerized diagnostics and warranties printed on glossy paper. All Sal had was skill, honesty, and a stubborn refusal to give up on things other people threw away. The bills were stacked on his desk like accusations. Rent, 2 months behind. Electric company, final notice. Part suppliers, calling daily with threats to cut off credit. The bank notice buried under everything else. The one that said foreclosure proceedings in red letters that seemed to burn through the paper. $23. That's what remained after paying for his daughter's college textbooks. $23 and a garage full of tools that wouldn't sell for enough to cover a fraction of what he owed. Maria, his daughter, was a junior at the University of Kentucky. Pre-med, the first Martinez ever to go to college, the first to have a chance at something better than grease under her fingernails and a perpetually aching back. She didn't know how bad things had gotten. Sal made sure of that. Every month, he sent what he could for her expenses, even if it meant choosing between groceries and heating oil. "Papa, I could transfer to community college," she'd offered last Christmas, seeing the worry lines etched deeper around his eyes. "Like hell," Sal had growled. "You stay where you are, keep studying. Smart girl like you shouldn't waste time in this dying town." But smart girls needed money for textbooks, for lab fees, for 100 expenses. Sal had never imagined when he'd promised his late wife he'd get their baby to college, no matter what it cost. His wife, Carmen, gone 3 years now to cancer, leaving Sal alone with promises to keep and bills he couldn't pay. She'd believed in him, believed in their daughter, believed that hard work and good intentions were enough to overcome anything. Standing there in his garage on that bitter February night, surrounded by half-finished repair jobs he couldn't afford to complete without parts he couldn't afford to buy, Sal wondered if Carmen had been wrong. He'd been preparing to lock up, maybe for the last time, when the storm hit. Not just any storm, a freak ice hurricane that meteorologists were already calling the worst Kentucky had seen in 50 years. The weather had turned vicious around 6 p.m. What started as light snow became sleet, then freezing rain, then something that didn't have a name. Ice accumulated faster than nature seemed to allow, turning every surface into a skating rink, every tree branch into a weapon waiting to fall. Sal had been working late on Mrs. Henderson's ancient Buick, the one repair job he'd taken on credit because he knew she needed her car to get to her dialysis appointments. The old woman had no family, no one else to help, and Sal couldn't bring himself to leave her stranded. By 9 p.m., the power had flickered twice. By 9:30, the temperature gauge outside his office window read 8 below zero. The kind of cold that made your lungs burn, that could kill you if you weren't careful. That's when he heard the motorcycles. At first he thought he was imagining it. Who would be crazy enough to ride in this weather? But the sound grew closer, multiple engines, struggling, some coughing, and missing, desperation written in their mechanical voices. Then came the knock. Bang, bang, bang. Urgent, terrified. Through the frosted window of his garage bay, Sal could see shapes. 8 figures in black leather, bikes scattered across his parking lot, like they'd barely made it. Steam rising from overheated engines that had been pushed beyond their limits. Sal's hand hesitated on the door lock. He knew those patches even through the ice and darkness. Hell's angels. The kind of men his mother had warned him about. The kind the newspapers said you should avoid. The kind that meant trouble for quiet mechanics who just wanted to fix cars and mind their own business. But then one of the figures collapsed. Just dropped to his knees in the parking lot, his body convulsing with hypothermic shivering. Another was trying to help him, but she could barely stand herself because, yes, one of them was a woman, her face blue with cold, ice crystals forming on her eyebrows. Sal had seen frostbite before, seen what the Kentucky winter could do to human flesh when it got serious. These people weren't just cold. They were dying. Carmen's voice echoed in his memory. Sal, you see someone hurting, you help. That's what makes you who you are. Sal made his choice. The garage door rolled up with a mechanical groan, and 8 frozen souls stumbled into Sal's world like refugees from a war zone. The leader was a mountain of a man, probably 6'4", with a beard full of ice crystals and eyes that had seen too much. His patch read, Devil's Disciples MC, President. Behind him, 7 others, men and women, young and old, all united by their desperate need for warmth and shelter. Jesus, the woman breathed, her voice barely a whisper through chattering teeth. Jesus, thank you. Get in here before you all freeze to death. Sal barked, his natural gruffness hiding the concern in his voice. Someone help me get this door closed. The big man, whose name was Thunder, moved to help despite hands so numb he could barely grip anything. Together, they sealed out the storm, trapping warmth inside the garage that smelled of motor oil, metal, and honest work. Mister, Thunder said, his voice cracking with cold and emotion. I don't know what to say. We've been riding for 6 hours, trying to outrun this storm. Every place we stopped, they took one look at our patches and slammed the door in our faces. Sal looked at them, really looked. Beneath the leather and the intimidating patches, he saw what he'd seen when he'd collapsed, human beings in crisis. The youngest couldn't have been more than 22, a kid with terror in his eyes and lips going blue. An older woman, probably somebody's grandmother, whose hands were shaking so violently she couldn't unzip her jacket. When's the last time any of you ate? Sal asked. Yesterday morning, admitted a wiry man with graying temples. Been riding hard, trying to get to a funeral in Tennessee. Brother of ours passed. Sal nodded. Death he understood. Loss he understood. There's a space heater in my office. And a coffee pot. Not much, but it's warm. He led them to the small office attached to the garage. Barely enough room for 8 people, but it was heated and dry. The coffee was bitter and old, but it was hot. Sal watched them wrap their fingers around the styrofoam cups like they were holding liquid gold. Name's Sal Martinez, he said, settling behind his cluttered desk. This is my place. Thunder Williams, the big man replied. President of the Devil's Disciples, Alabama chapter. These are my brothers and sisters. He introduced each one. Maria, the grandmother, Spike, the kid, Doc, the gray-haired man who turned out to be an actual retired physician, and four others whose road names painted pictures of lives lived on the margins. "What's in Tennessee?" Sal asked. Thunder's face darkened. "Funeral for Big Jim Casey, founding member of our chapter. Man saved my life more than once. We were riding up from Mobile, supposed to be there tomorrow morning. Roads are closed," Sal said quietly. "Weather service says nothing's moving until this storm passes. Might be days." The silence that followed was heavy with disappointment and grief. These weren't criminals or troublemakers. They were family members trying to pay their respects to someone they'd loved. "There's a motel about 5 miles up the road," Sal offered. "Tried that," Maria said, her voice still shaky. "Soon as they saw our patches, suddenly they were full up." Sal felt something hot and angry twist in his stomach. He'd faced prejudice himself, a Mexican-American in a town that was still learning to accept anyone who didn't look like their great-grandfathers. But this was different. This was people turning away fellow human beings because of what they wore, because of assumptions and fear. "Well," Sal said, "making another choice that would change his life. Garage gets warm enough if we keep the heaters running. Got some blankets in the back. Not the Ritz, but you won't freeze." Thunder stared at him. "Mister, we can't ask you to." "You didn't ask," Sal interrupted. "I'm offering. Storm's not going anywhere tonight. Neither are you." What happened next defied every stereotype, every prejudice, every assumption about bikers and mechanics, and the kinds of people who supposedly didn't mix. Sal found himself sharing his meager supplies, a box of crackers from his desk drawer, a jar of peanut butter, some instant soup mix that made passable broth when heated with the electric kettle in his office. Not much, but everything he had. The bikers, in return, shared their stories. Doc, the retired physician, had ridden with the club for 30 years. "People see the patch and think criminal," he said. "Don't see the charity rides, the toy runs at Christmas, the times we've escorted funeral processions for fallen soldiers." Maria, the grandmother, talked about her grandson who was graduating high school next month. "First in our family to graduate," she said proudly. "Going to trade school to be an electrician. Says he wants to fix things, like his grandma Maria fixes broken hearts." Spike, the young one, was actually a college student working on his engineering degree. "Club's paying for my education," he admitted. "They believe in investing in family." Thunder himself had served 3 tours in Afghanistan before coming home to a country that didn't know what to do with broken veterans. "The Brotherhood saved me," he said quietly. "Gave me purpose when I thought I didn't have any left." And slowly, as the night wore on and the storm raged outside, Sal found himself sharing too. About Carmen, about Maria's pre-med studies, about the garage that had been his whole world, about bills he couldn't pay and dreams that seemed to be dying a little more each day. "Your daughter," Doc said thoughtfully. "Pre-med. That's expensive." Sal nodded, embarrassed. "Kid's smart enough to be a doctor. Shouldn't have to give up her dreams because her old man can't make ends meet." Thunder and Doc exchanged glances. Something passed between them, a communication that didn't require words. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion finally claimed them. Sal set up space heaters around the garage, distributed every blanket and tarp he could find. The bikers arranged themselves around the warm spots, sharing body heat, looking out for each other with the practiced efficiency of people who'd slept rough before. Thunder approached Sal as he prepared to lock up his office. "Sal," he said quietly, "I need you to know something. Doc there? He's not just any member. He's national treasurer for the Devil's Disciples. One of the highest-ranking brothers in the entire organization." Sal shrugged. "Don't matter to me what his rank is." He was cold. "You were all cold." Thunder smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. "That's exactly why it matters. You didn't ask who we were. You didn't ask what we'd done. You saw people in trouble, and you helped. That's rare, brother. Rarer than you know." "What would you have done?" Sal asked. "If it was your garage and strangers showed up freezing?" "Same thing," Thunder admitted. "But most people wouldn't. As Sal settled into his office chair for a few hours of uncomfortable sleep, he had no idea that Thunder was already making plans. Phone calls that would happen as soon as the storm cleared. Conversations that would spread across state lines and chapter houses. Because Doc wasn't just national treasurer of the Devil's Disciples. He was also the blood brother of Razor Cain, supreme commander of the entire Hell's Angels organization. The most respected, most feared, most powerful biker in North America. And when family calls family in the Brotherhood, the response is swift, organized, and overwhelming. Sal woke at 6 a.m. to the sound of silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed into crystal and ice. Beautiful and deadly in equal measure. The bikers were already stirring, packing their gear with quiet efficiency. Doc was examining their motorcycles, checking for ice damage, making sure everything was roadworthy. "How do they look?" Sal asked, joining him. "3 of them need work," Doc replied. "Ice got into the electrical systems. Spike's bike threw a rod yesterday. He was riding double with Maria." Sal walked around the motorcycles. His mechanics, cataloging problems. These weren't just machines to their owners. They were freedom, identity, connection to something larger than themselves. "I can fix them," he said without thinking. "Might take a day or two, but I can get them running." Thunder looked up from loading his saddlebags. "Sal, we can't afford." "Who said anything about payment?" Sal interrupted. "You need to get to that funeral. I can help with that." For the second time in 12 hours, Thunder stared at this stocky Mexican mechanic who kept confounding every expectation. The work took most of the day. Sal replaced spark plugs, cleaned electrical connections, rebuilt a carburetor that had been flooded with ice melt. The bikers helped when they could, handed him tools, held flashlights, proved they knew their way around an engine. Around noon, Doc pulled Sal aside. "Brother," he said quietly, "Thunder told me about your situation. The bills, your daughter's education." Sal's face flushed. "That's not your problem." "Maybe it is," Doc replied. "Maybe when someone shows the kind of character you showed last night, it becomes everybody's problem to make sure the world doesn't crush that character." He pulled out a business card, simple black with white lettering. "This has my personal number on it. You call if you need anything." And I mean anything. Sal took the card, not understanding yet that he was holding a direct line to one of the most powerful networks in America. By 4 p.m., all the bikes were running. The bikers geared up, their leather now dry, their faces no longer blue with cold. They looked formidable again. Dangerous, the kind of people most folks would cross the street to avoid. But Sal saw them differently now. He saw family. He saw loyalty. He saw people who took care of their own and remembered kindness. Thunder was the last to leave. He gripped Sal's hand in both of his massive ones. "Brother," he said, "what you did for us won't be forgotten. The Devil's Disciples take care of family. After last night, your family just did what anyone would do," Sal replied. "No," Thunder said firmly. "You did what you would do. There's a difference." The 8 motorcycles rumbled to life, their engines echoing off the garage walls. One by one, they pulled on a Highway 27, heading toward Tennessee in a funeral that would now happen on time because a mechanic had chosen compassion over caution. Sal stood in his doorway, watching their tail lights disappear into the gray February afternoon. The garage felt empty without them, too quiet, too normal. He had no way of knowing that Thunder was already on his phone, making the first of many calls. That Doc was reaching out to contacts that stretched from coast to coast. That within hours, the story of Sal Martinez and his kindness would be spreading through biker networks like wildfire. All he knew was that he'd done the right thing, that Carmen would have been proud, that sometimes, when the world felt cold and cruel and indifferent, people still showed up for each other. The bank notice was still on his desk. The bills were still unpaid. Nothing practical had changed. Everything important had changed completely. Tuesday morning came gray and cold, but the storm was gone. Sal arrived at the garage at 7 a.m., same as always, carrying coffee in a travel mug that had seen better years and wearing coveralls that bore the honest stains of 30 years' labor. He'd slept better than he had in months. Something about helping those stranded bikers had settled something in his chest, reminded him who he was beneath all the worry and financial pressure. The first phone call came at 8:30. Martinez Auto Repair. Sal answered, expecting a customer with a car that wouldn't start in the cold. Sal Martinez? The voice was deep, unfamiliar, with an accent that suggested Texas or Oklahoma. Yeah, that's me. Brother, my name is Razor Kane. I'm Supreme Commander of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. I believe you helped some of my family 2 nights ago. Sal nearly dropped the phone. He'd heard that name before, seen it in newspapers, usually attached to words like investigation and federal task force. I helped some folks who were caught in the storm, Sal managed. More than that, brother. You showed them dignity when the rest of the world showed them doors slammed in their faces. You shared what you had when you barely had anything. That means something in our world. They needed help, Sal said simply. Yes, they did. And you gave it. Doc's my blood brother, Sal. Has been since we were kids in Detroit. When someone takes care of my family, they become my family. You understand what I'm telling you? Sal didn't. Not really. But something in Razor's tone suggested this was bigger than a thank you call. Doc tells me you're having some financial difficulties. Daughter in college, business struggling, bills piling up. That true? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sal's pride bristled. I can handle my own problems. I'm sure you can. But here's the thing about family, Sal. We don't let family struggle alone. Not when we can help. Not when they've proven they deserve help. I don't want charity. Not charity. Brotherhood. There's a difference. Razor explained it like this. The Hells Angels had a network of businesses, legitimate enterprises run by members and supporters. Motorcycle dealerships, auto shops, construction companies. They helped each other with contracts, referrals, equipment loans. What I'm offering, Razor said, is to bring your shop into that network. We've got brothers with bikes that need work, businesses that need reliable mechanics, connections that could bring you more work than you can handle. Why? Sal asked. Because you didn't slam a door in my family's faces when they were freezing to death. Because you saw people instead of patches. Because the world needs more men like you, and we protect what we value. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. By the end, Sal had 3 appointments for motorcycle work that week, a promise of steady business, and an invitation to something called a support meeting the following weekend. Think about it, Razor said. But don't think too long. Family doesn't wait when family needs help. The second call came an hour later. A woman's voice, professional but warm. Mr. Martinez? This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the University of Kentucky Financial Aid Office. I'm calling about your daughter Maria's account. Sal's stomach dropped. She in trouble? Quite the opposite. She's been awarded a full academic scholarship, effective immediately. The Devil's Disciples Educational Foundation has covered her remaining tuition, room, and board, and all educational expenses through medical school. The What Foundation? It's a scholarship program for children for deserving families. Your daughter's grades qualified her, but the final selection was based on a personal recommendation from Dr. Marcus Williams. Do you know Dr. Williams? Sal smiled for the first time in months. Yeah, I know Doc. The third call came just before noon. This one from the bank. Mr. Martinez? This is Janet Fletcher, your loan officer. I have some unusual news about your account. Sal braced himself for another foreclosure notice. Someone has made a substantial payment toward your outstanding debts. Your mortgage is now current. Your equipment loan is paid in full, and you have a positive balance of $3,500 in your operating account. Someone did what? I can't reveal the identity of the donor, but they specified that this is a one-time assistance payment for a valued member of the community. Mr. Martinez, in 20 years of banking, I've never seen anything like this. Neither had Sal. By Wednesday, the story had spread beyond the immediate circle of Devil's Disciples and Hell's Angels. Biker networks across the South were talking about the mechanic in Kentucky who'd opened his garage to stranded brothers, who'd worked all day to get them back on the road, who'd asked for nothing in return. The phone kept ringing. Motorcycle owners from 3 states asking if Sal had availability. Custom shops requesting his services. Riding clubs planning routes that would bring them through Millfield just to meet the man who'd become a legend overnight. Thursday morning brought the first caravan. 15 bikes from a Harley-Davidson owners group in Nashville, all needing minor work that could have been done at any of a dozen shops closer to home. But they wanted to bring their business to Sal. "Heard you're good people," their leader explained. "We take care of good people." By Thursday afternoon, Sal had more work scheduled than he'd had in the previous 6 months combined. That evening, his daughter called. "Papa." Maria's voice was thick, with emotion. "They told me about the scholarship." "Papa, how did this happen?" Sal looked around his garage, bustling now with activity, filled with motorcycles bearing patches from clubs he'd never heard of, surrounded by men and women who'd traveled hundreds of miles just to shake his hand and give him their business. "Sometimes," he said, "when you do right by people, people do right by you." "But Papa, this is medical school. This is my whole future." "What did you do?" "I opened a door, mija. I opened a door." Friday brought a problem Sal had never imagined. Too much business. His small garage couldn't handle the volume of work coming his way. He was turning down jobs, disappointing people who'd driven hours to meet him. That's when Thunder showed up. The massive biker president pulled into the lot around closing time, dismounted from his gleaming Harley, and surveyed the organized chaos of Sal's suddenly thriving business. "Problem?" Thunder asked. "Good problem," Sal admitted. "More work than I can handle." Thunder smiled. "Funny thing, I know some brothers in construction. Happen to be looking for work. What would you say to expanding this place?" "Can't afford." "Not talking about you paying for it, brother. Talking about an investment. Hell's Angels Support Group has been looking for a legitimate business to back. A place to anchor our charitable activities in Kentucky." Thunder laid out the proposal. They would finance an expansion of the garage, double the bay space, add modern equipment. In return, Sal would continue running the day-to-day operations, while the club used the facility for their community outreach programs. "What kind of outreach?" Sal asked. "Toy runs at Christmas. Bike safety classes for kids. Mechanical training for veterans who need job skills. The kind of work that proves we're more than what people think we are." It was an offer that would transform not just Sal's business, but his entire life. A chance to be part of something known, larger. Something that used the strength of Brotherhood to lift up communities. "I need to think about it," Sal said. "Of course you do. But Sal?" Thunder gripped his shoulder. "Family doesn't just mean blood. Sometimes it means finding your tribe, people who share your values, people who've got your back." That night, Sal sat in his small apartment above the garage, looking at bank statements that showed numbers he hadn't seen in years, at appointment books filled weeks in advance, at business cards from contacts across the South who wanted to work with him. 2 days ago, he'd been preparing to close down the family business. Tonight, he was considering an expansion that would make him one of the most successful mechanics in Kentucky. All because he'd opened a door to 8 freezing human beings and treated them like family. Saturday morning brought a convoy. Sal heard them before he saw them, the unmistakable rumble of dozens of motorcycle engines in formation. He stepped outside and stopped dead in his tracks. The parking lot was filling with bikes. Not just a few, dozens, then hundreds. They came from every direction, a parade of chrome and leather that stretched back to Highway 27. Hell's Angels, Devil's Disciples, Outlaws, Banditos, Iron Horseman patches from clubs across the Southeast, all converging on a small auto repair shop in rural Kentucky. At the head of the procession rode Razor Kane himself, Supreme Commander of the Hell's Angels, a legend among legends, followed by presidents and officers from 24 chapters. Behind them came something even more impressive: families. Women and children, veterans and blue-collar workers, teachers and small business owners. The extended community that surrounded the clubs, people who shared their values of loyalty, respect, and taking care of their own. The last motorcycle to arrive pulled a trailer, loaded with something that made Sal's eyes water. A brand new tool chest. Professional-grade equipment that would have cost him $20,000 if he could have afforded it. Lifts, diagnostic computers, specialized tools for modern vehicles. Everything he needed to compete with those fancy shops in Lexington. Razor approached, removing his helmet, his weathered face split by a genuine smile. "Morning, brother. Hope you don't mind us dropping by." Sal looked at the sea of motorcycles, at hundreds of people who'd traveled from across the region, at equipment that represented more money than his garage had ever generated in profit. "Why?" he asked simply. "Because you didn't ask why when 8 strangers needed help," Razor replied. "Because you saw family where others saw a threat. Because the world needs more people like you, and we protect what we value." What happened next was part celebration, part business meeting, part family reunion. Grills appeared from trailer hitches. Coolers emerged from saddlebags. Within an hour, the parking lot had been transformed into an outdoor barbecue that would have done any Kentucky family gathering proud. But this wasn't just a party. It was an initiation. Doc Williams, now revealed as one of the most powerful men in the biker world, presented Sal with a leather vest. Not patches, he hadn't earned those yet, but a vest that marked him as family, as someone under protection, as a man who could call on the Brotherhood when needed. "This doesn't make you a Hell's Angel," Doc explained, "but it makes you our brother. It means you've got 50,000 people across this country who will answer if you call." Thunder stepped forward with paperwork. The expansion plans, drawn up by architects who owed favors to the club. Construction schedules that would have the new bays operational within 2 months. Contracts with suppliers who would give Sal wholesale prices on parts and equipment. "All you have to do," Thunder said, "is keep being who you are. Keep treating people right. Keep showing the world what brotherhood really means." The celebration continued into the evening. Stories were shared around grills and picnic tables. Children played on the gravel lot while their parents talked shop with a mechanic who'd become famous overnight for doing the right thing. As the sun set over the Kentucky hills, painting everything golden and peaceful, Sal found himself standing with Razor Cane, watching families pack up their gear. "This is what we really are," Razor said quietly. "Not the criminals the media makes us out to be. Not the outlaws in the movies. We're families. We're communities. We're people who believe that loyalty matters, that your word is your bond, that you take care of your own." "What happens now?" Sal asked. "Now you become part of something bigger than yourself. You help us show the world that bikers aren't the enemy. That brotherhood isn't about being against something, it's about being for something. For loyalty, for standing up, for taking care of people who can't take care of themselves." As the motorcycles rumbled to life and began their exodus from Millfield, Sal understood that his life had changed in ways that went far beyond financial security. He'd found his tribe, his purpose, his chance to be part of something that mattered. The grand reopening of Martinez Auto Repair was scheduled for a Saturday in August. The new facility was 3 times the size of the original garage, with 6 service bays, state-of-the-art equipment, and a separate building that housed the Devil's Disciples Community Outreach Center. The guest list read like a who's who of motorcycle culture. Club presidents from across North America, custom builders whose bikes appeared in magazines, professional mechanics who'd heard about the Kentucky shop that was setting new standards for honest dealing and quality work. But the people Sal was proudest to see were the locals. Mrs. Henderson, whose ancient Buick now received free maintenance as part of the shop's community service program. The high school auto shop class that came for field trips every month. Veterans who were learning motorcycle repair as part of a job training program that had placed 37 men and women in good-paying careers. Maria, his daughter, was there too. Home from medical school for the summer, working part-time in the garage office, managing the books for a business that now employed 12 full-time mechanics and supported 24 families. "Papa," she said, watching bikers and townspeople mingle at the barbecue picnic tables. I'm proud of you. For what, Mija? For being yourself. For showing me that success isn't about how much money you make. It's about how many people you help along the way. The keynote speaker at the reopening was Dr. Marcus Williams Doc, who'd officially retired from the road to become director of the Devil's Disciples Educational Foundation. The scholarship program that had started with Maria's tuition now helped over 200 young people pursue technical training and college degrees. 6 months ago, Doc told the assembled crowd, a man in this town made a choice. He could have kept his door locked when strangers appeared in a storm. He could have let fear and prejudice guide his actions. Instead, he chose compassion. He chose to see people instead of patches. And that choice changed hundreds of lives. As applause echoed across the expanded lot, Sal thought about the journey that had brought him here. From counting $23 in bills to running the most respected motorcycle repair facility in 3 states. From worrying about his daughter's tuition to watching her graduate debt-free from medical school. But mostly, he thought about family. Not just his blood family, but the chosen family he'd found in the most unlikely place. Thunder approached as the crowd began to thin, carrying 2 bottles of beer and wearing the satisfied smile of a man whose investment had paid off beyond his wildest expectations. Regrets? Thunder asked. Sal looked around at his transformed business, at the community that had grown around it, at the young veterans learning job skills in the training center, at the children getting their first lessons in motorcycle safety. Yeah, he said. I regret waiting so long to understand what family really means. Thunder laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. Brother, you learn when you were supposed to learn. Everything happens for a reason. As the August sun set behind the Kentucky hills, Sal Martinez stood in the doorway of his garage, transformed now beyond recognition, but still carrying the smell of motor oil and honest work, and marveled at how one stormy night could change everything. He'd opened a door to 8 freezing strangers. They'd opened a door to a whole new life. And in the end, that's what brotherhood really meant, being willing to open doors for each other, especially when the storm outside seemed too cold and cruel to survive alone. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.